If we're going to be lying to everybody else, we need to be honest with each other, Jake.
I know it's very cliche to say that New York City feels like its own character in The Black Rabbit, but it does. I'm curious, Zach, Kate, can you talk a little about how the chosen location impacted the narrative? And then for you, Jude, how New York kind of has a role in shaping who Jake is as a character?
Go for it.
Zach and I lived in New York for almost 20 years during our 20s and 30s. And it was, it still very much feels like home to us. And it's, a place, to me, it's the best city in the world. But we wanted to, it's so often represented in films and TV, but we had never kind of seen our New York, the kind of maybe grittier or less sanded down parts of it, the kind of underbelly type stuff. So we truly just wanted to, make a portrait of the places that we were in New York and kind of establish the workers and the toll and the kind of the people that inhabit the city. And then the details of what New York is were super important to us. So we would, we've talked so much about like a commute. If we had a scene in Coney Island and then we were going to be shooting in the Lower East Side, we were always saying, well, there's no way you could take a subway in that much time. And if you're driving, it's 4:00 in traffic. So we want every kind of detail had to be just, who are the people that are going to be walking by the street in this hour? Who are the kind of people that would be let into the Black Rabbit? Who's the bouncer that Jake and Vince would have selected to choose the people to walk into this club? Because if you live in New York, you feel that, and you would know. If you didn't live in New York, you might not know if that stuff didn't feel exactly right. But to us, it had to feel exactly right because it was our experience, and we wanted to represent it authentically.
And I would just say it was, we had an incredible location scout, guy Paul Eskenazi, who had also worked on Succession, and to get to put things in the script like the 10th Street Russian baths where Troy Kotsur's character works, that is a real institution. It's not, I don't believe in the basement there's like a, a bookie's office, but that is sort of this notorious New York East Village institution that, spent many of like hungover Sunday morning at that place. And to get to like weave that part of our life into this story in this world in a fictitious way, but it was really, it was really incredible for us to kind of get to have that experience.
Yeah, bars we hung out at, restaurants we went to, like the locations. We almost got zero like no's for places we wanted to shoot. It was, by the end, we were like, we could really shoot on the Brooklyn Bridge, like someone running across the bridge. That's possible, and it was a thrill.
Love that. And then for you, Jude, how the city has a.
I was just thinking that when you live here and work here, even if you're a visitor, and I've lived here for, up to a year and sometimes just visit, obviously like other folk for a weekend, you feel all that they just described kind of in your body. So I think to really work and make it here, you have to embody all of that. And to survive, Kate talked about a little earlier about, it's a graft, it's a grind. You got to work really hard. You got to have ambition. And you could argue you've got to have a little bit of faking front. You've got to fake it before you make it. And Jake certainly got that. But at the same time, you meet him at an interesting point in his life. He's turned 50. He's really trying to put the sort of the bad habits behind him. He's trying to go legit. Or no, he is legit, but he's trying to kind of step up and in a way claim a little bit of the ambition for himself. So it's a key moment. And of course it's ruptured and left in rags because of the return of his bigger brother, who was a big part of building him up in the first place. But capturing that kind of swagger, that kind of streetwise confidence, he can talk to a Pulitzer novelist just as well as a rock star, just as well as, the guys who deliver the meat, just as well as, the guys who work in the kitchen. It's quite a plate spinning magic trick in many ways. And I knew and met a few of those people. I've known them since I've been coming here, and they're very attractive. You also know, as with all of us, as with anyone, that there's other stuff going on, and that's really at the heart of our drama. You get to, I love you two always describe it like, you go into these restaurants And at night, you're just having the best time. And, the more you drink, the more fun you have. And if you go in the morning, the floor's a little sticky and they smell kind of bad and there are rats out the back and you suddenly see a whole other side of it.
You mentioned Rockstar there, which made me immediately think about the music video scene, which was so much fun to watch, despite being mortally afraid of rabbits and particularly people wearing rabbit heads.
Oh, sorry.
Wow.
We've got some of those masks. We should send you one.
Someone was at the party last night. That was a little creepy.
With a glass of wine.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. But talk about filming that and getting to kind of explore that part of Jake, even in a flashback, and what some of your like musical inspirations for kind of what his look. I was getting Kurt Cobain kind of vibes from the look, but how that kind of played out.
Well, it was all very much written in, and it was a part of the backstory that I leapt on and got very overexcited about, kind of hoping that you'd see more and more of it. And until I realized that playing myself in my 20s is just not going to happen, without a whole lot of sticky tape, scotch tape, whatever it is. It was a chance to have a bit of fun. I think, oddly though, really seriously, it's an important reminder of not just the brothers' relationship, but where the brothers' relationship kind of went wrong in the past. The hopes and aspirations that Jake had, I think, for being a successful musician, blown up by his brother, which we learned to understand. And the best way to do that was to sort of go back and see what it was they were like. And I just sort of thought, because Jake's got a bit of a hairdo going throughout the series, and I thought, well, who would he have wanted to be back then? And I just kept coming back to Cobain. And we were very lucky. Well, you should talk more about, because you wrote all the great music references, and then we went to Albert, and why don't you fill that in?
Well, I will just say before that, just that I love that music video flashback, but I really love the moment that you come back in the bar, just that idea of, being a 40 or 50-year-old, and then to be in a bar where someone was playing your video. And I just love Jake's like pretty embarrassed, but also trying to look cool. And I think you play that really well. And we always, like, you guys brought so much more to that scene that was even written. But I just love the idea of Vince is really feeling good, doing a good job up there. This song comes up. It's kind of, he's living in this moment again. And Jake has got on his heels a little bit, doesn't exactly know how to like interact with this. I love that dynamic. That's like, I think one of the coolest moments in that episode.
Well, I mean, one of the great things that we got to do on the show. So we were huge Strokes fans, and the, that time in New York, it's captured really beautifully in this book, Meet Me in the Bathroom, just about the sort of post 9/11 reemergence of like a New York rock scene. I think we really talked a lot about the brothers band kind of, emerging out of that and flaming out maybe before they reached that pinnacle. But so we got very lucky, and Albert Hammond Jr. from the Strokes wrote the songs that the Black Rabbits performed. But, Jude sings, that's Jude's voice. And he's really, I think, incredibly really talented.
I know.
We did have to pull him out of the studio a few
Kicking
times.
and screaming.
I wanted to lay down an album.
He wanted the whole
I was announcing a tour, even though a comeback tour, even though we never had it.
Yeah, we were like, Jude, you're due on set. And he was like, no, I got a couple more tracks.
But
it's really in vogue right now for actors to do their own musical careers. So I'm just saying.
I don't need any encouragement.
Don't threaten him with a good time.
I really do.
The idea of a band that was on the precipice and never really made it is such a heartbreak and we loved kind of like going in that vein, as that they kind of reached fame in New York but could never break out, and to feel like Jake is carrying this weight of like, my idiot like, were it not for this thing, my life could have gone a completely different direction. And we loved kind of thinking about that for.
I actually wanted to ask more about the music, because this show has such an impeccable soundtrack to it. Can the both of you, and I mean, Jude, feel free to talk as well, if there's like any songs that kind of you look to for Jake as maybe inspiration, getting into his mindset. But this has such an impeccable soundtrack. Talk about kind of putting that together for the series.
You guys referenced so many great tunes. It was very clear also, we were all of a kind of like mind, and I think knowing this scene, knowing this type of bar, we had playlists that we were sharing very early on, and then we were lucky enough to have a great team go out and select them. You can't always get exactly what you want, but we got pretty darn close.
Yeah. And I mean, music played a huge role, both obviously in the vibe of the show, but also in the character's life. And so, really beginning Vince's journey with that song, what's it, Willie Hutch?
Yeah.
That is, also becomes later a song that his mother plays in a flashback. And so the idea that music was, very prevalent in their life, it was something that we wanted just to be imbued in the characters. And I don't know, I think I don't know if there's like one song that really stands out as what the aesthetic.
For me, it's always the Strokes.
Yeah. We listen to a lot of the Strokes.
Yeah, there's a Stroke song at the beginning of episode 8, which is a flashback. That's, I think it was, we played a lot in the writer's room, honestly, to sort of evoke, there's something nostalgic and inspiring and also tragic about that song. And,
Yeah, I think there was also something smart about including, I think it's in 2, the Fontaine DC's track, because it's also a reminder that, this isn't a period piece.
Yeah.
This is about now. And that vitality is very well demonstrated by a band like the Fontaines, who are ripping it up globally. Yeah. And I think carrying on that kind of really edgy punk rock guitar band, not just sound, but kind of ethic.
Yeah. And then obviously having Ray, who is both, I think, this bridge between eras, who's incredibly modern and vibrant, but then also evokes a different era of music in New York. And I think her performance in episode 3 linked with the song at the end of the series, which is also a Dinah Washington song, and that I think it sort of hopefully brings together this whole picture of New York.
And you mentioned the flashbacks there with their mother. I'm really curious to know what audiences will end up taking out of the flashbacks with Joe Mancuso and their mom. Can you talk a little bit about that dynamic and kind of how you threaded it through? Because it's a very interesting connection between the two.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were so lucky to have Troy in that role, and I think that his range is really, really wide, and to be able to play someone who's both, the heavy and can be menacing, but also incredibly tender and emotional and vulnerable. I think that, we were really interested in exploring what the less menacing side of that character was. And so,
and I think that character feels in Jake and Vince. It's a familial relationship that they grow up and have this kind of shared tragic past. And, I think were it up to Mancuso, things would have gone much differently between them. And you can see there's, just like Zach was saying, there's so much tenderness and sort of fatherly avuncular love that he feels for these guys that, I think makes his heavy and makes him, when he has to be bad, feel, even harder. And I think you guys played that really well. I love the scene, just rewatching it during this premieres when you first see him in the office, because I think the audience is going there feeling like this is going to be scary, but then it's really warm when you guys see each other and you
think it's going to be okay. Yeah. It's all going to be okay. Yeah. He talks about my mum. I look like my mum.
Yeah.
But I also love, I don't think, because what's wonderful as an audience member is you fill in gaps, but I love that there's a suggestion that maybe Mancuso and our mother actually had something, and so when he looks at me, he's like, oh, that's the woman I maybe was in love with, and it's complicated, and I love that it's not in that. There are lots of areas in the past that are detailed and you learn everything about or get to see. And then there are other areas that are a little vague, and I think that's just great storytelling. It lets you fill in the rest. But of course, that links us also to Junior. Yeah. And Junior being, I always picture Junior's that bit younger, say, than Jake and Vince. And so I can imagine him as this snotty little kid who has always had the best bike, because and the best sneakers. And we were always like, get out of here. You're only 8, leave us alone. But his journey, having to try and prove himself to this father who's obviously got great impact and weight on the street. It binds us all, Yeah.
It does.
I love, there's a scene in episode 6 where Junior and Vince have car ride together where they both sort of been ostracized by their families, and they maybe for the first time realized the similar roles they played as kind of the black sheep of their families, and it's sometimes you plan that stuff in writing, and sometimes you find yourself with two great actors, and all of a sudden something emerges that was inherent, but maybe we hadn't specifically shown a spotlight on, and that stuff is very rewarding.
And to add to that, Babbitt, because when you have a great actor like Chris Coy come in, and these guys as nimble and smart enough as writers to sort of go, oh, we can add a little bit here. You also realize, well, wait a minute. If we knew Junior and we knew Mancuso, then Babbitt probably grew up in our neighborhood. So we know this guy. So this guy who's sort of terrorizing us has probably always terrorized us, right? He was the thug around the corner who beat everyone up, who you just never wanted to get on the wrong side of. And again, it just beds it all in.
But we talked a little bit like who could intimidate these guys and who, they're the Babbitt and Junior are a bit younger, so how are you going to scare Vince and Jake? But that idea that they're kind of wild cardish, and I think those guys played it so well. They're unpredictable and at times not very bright, and I think that does make them kind of really hard to clock. And I think that makes them so scary.
Yes, thank you all so much. I'm getting the wrap. So love the order, love the Black Rabbit. Hope the three of you work together again because you are magic.
Thanks, Maggie.